Bryce drove up to a quaint little house in the middle of the woods for a rousing round of house-sitting. One of her co-workers, an elderly goat woman, was going out of town for the weekend and had asked if Bryce would be willing to watch over her property for the time. Bryce internally wondered why the old goat would need her to do such a thing, considering the house was incredibly isolated and unlikely to be broken into a broken bar. But hey, Bryce was being paid to guard the place, and after buying concert tickets the previous week she could use the extra cash. Bryce got out of her car and absent-mindedly looked around at the scenery. Her ears twitched and flicked at the sounds of birds mingling about all over the place, and her eyes got to indulge in the beautiful tranquility and color of the surrounding woods. Bryce's tail wagged as the thought of living in a place like this permanently. After that, Bryce quickly gathered up everything she'd brought along for the stay and headed in the house. Eek! She squeaked as she stepped in the house and turned the lights on. It was incredibly dusty in the house, enough to make her sneeze and upwards of 3 times within only a few seconds. Ugh! God! When was the last time Miss Nightmare dusted in here? Bryce dropped her bags in the living room and immediately got to work looking for a duster of any kind. There was no way Bryce was spending a weekend like this. She could already feel the dust caking in her fur, and that was an absolutely awful feeling. Luckily, it wouldn't take Bryce too long to find a duster that was stashed away in a kitchen drawer. Immediately she got to work dusting. Whenever she was met with somewhere too high to reach, she would wrap her ribbons around the handle of the duster and carry it further up that way. Eventually, her quest led her to the closet in Miss Nightmare's closet, where Bryce discovered something odd. In the bottom of the closet, hidden behind an army of old lady dresses a broken bar, was a small, incredibly old TV. Bryce inadvertently giggled a bit at the sight of it. It had been an extremely long time since she'd seen a TV like this. She couldn't even remember where specifically she'd seen one. Oh well, a broken bar. Back to work, Bryce hummed to herself as she gave the TV a good once-over with the duster. And that's when things got weird. Once she was through dusting that broken bar, it suddenly turned on, displaying a flickering, white screen. Bryce froze up, and her tail stood attention. What the hell? And as the seconds went past the broken bar, the TV screen seemed to get brighter, and when Bryce stood in a side glance, she came to a startling realization. The TV wasn't getting brighter. Broken bar, the world around her was getting darker. Bryce shot to her paws and tried to open the windows to let some extra light in, but it didn't do much. Everything around the Sylvian just continued to get darker. A broken bar, yet darker. What's going on? Where's all the light going? She cried out, holding her hands to her head in fear. Before Bryce knew it, the world around her was entirely coated in darkness, all except for the TV screen. But before Bryce could try to investigate it further, she suddenly began falling as whatever ground was beneath her seemed to completely give away. Bryce fell for an unknown amount of time. Eventually, she felt herself slip into unconsciousness. It didn't last long, however, as suddenly Bryce awoke. She was standing in pure darkness once again. Bryce groaned and rubbed her eyes to see if that would help her sight on a broken bar, but nope, pure darkness. A broken bar. Hello? Is anyone out there? She called out, not even receiving an echo in return. What the hell was this place? Bryce began to tentatively walk around. The ground felt like absolutely nothing. It didn't feel smooth, soft, rocky, nothing. It was like Bryce was walking on pure air, and with each step she feared she would just fall down a hole she couldn't see and start falling again. But then suddenly a broken bar, a spotlight shone down on Bryce, and confetti blasted at her from no discernible source. She let out a shrill cry of surprise as her body tensed up and her fur stood on end. Well, folks, a loud, pompous voice cried out as the sounds of people cheering filled the room. We've finally got someone with some kind of basic empathy around here. Bryce's eyes darted all around, and her ribbons whipped back and forth as she tried with all her might to scope out where all these things were coming from. Hold on. What's going on here? Where am I? Who are you? Bryce called out. I was hoping you'd ask. The voice chuckled. Mike, play the VHS. The spotlight then went out as the rest of the room lit up with the video. It's now time for our feature presentation. A broken bar, the voice spoke as the video displayed a bunch of lights illuminating the figure of a man with a TV for a head. Bryce tried to look away from the video, but it was absolutely everywhere she looked. It was like donning a virtual reality headset. The video continued playing, hyping up whoever the TV-headed man was with a bunch of wacky, extremely dated CGI scenes. Even Bryce couldn't help but laugh at a scene which featured a crappy CGI model of her screaming at a computer with the backing phrase of, "The show that makes you scream." Say it with him, folks. The video continued, "Mr. Antenna's ATV time. And in the next moment, Bryce suddenly found herself standing on a wooden stage with loud, obnoxiously happy music blaring in her ears. Behind her was a blue background filled with moving blue stars. In front of her was an empty theater area, a broken bar, and to the left of her was the TV-headed man. "Tenna. Okay, can you please explain to me what is going on here?" Bryce said. By now she was more so annoyed than scared. We here have decided it's finally time to get with the times. For a long time we've believed that TV had gone out of style, but nope, it's simply taken on new life through the wonders of live streaming. Tenna boomed to the empty theater. Bryce just stood there in confusion. So, new and long-time viewers, we're making the jump to live streaming our beloved programs. All of a sudden, the theater filled up with assorted, pitch-black figures who cheered and threw roses at Tenna, who bowed from left to right in quick succession. And before Bryce even had time to flinch, the audience vanished into the void. "Oh, okay, I'm a broken bar, but what does this all have to do with me?" Bryce asked. Tenna slid over to Bryce so fast she nearly thought he teleported. "Well, we here at Mr. Tenna's TV Time BRYCE are all a broken bar vintage, so we don't quite know how to make the switch, and since you were kind enough to give me a good cleaning up there, we figured you'd be kind enough to help USUPD switch things up." The audience appeared and cheered again before vanishing. Whoa, would you look at that, folks. Tenna cheered as a giant thermometer labeled A excitement ascended from the ceiling. The meter went all the way to the top in a matter of seconds, despite the lack of any real audience. "We haven't had levels of cheer this high since the live showing of The Weather's Wedding." And with this Tenna momentarily paused and looked at Bryce, seemingly in an attempt to figure out what exactly she was. "This Fox's help we'll be able to take our programming to new heights we never thought possible." Bryce didn't have the heart to correct Tenna, considering she was already going to feel like an asshole with what she was about to say next. "Yeah, broken bar, I can't help with this." "You a broken bar. Can't," Tenna said, his screen going black as any cheer in his voice immediately dissolved. I have my own life to attend to and all. I can't take up trying to help a whole TV station you update." The cheer meter immediately plummeted as the music cut out jarringly. Tenna slouched over and turned away. "Oh, a broken bar. Oh, I see, a broken bar, I get it. I can't expect someone I barely know to help me out a broken bar. We'll just figure it out ourselves. The few of us left a broken bar, yeah. We can do it before we get our funding pulled completely." Bryce let out a stifled sigh as guilt stabbed at her chin. The broken bar, after all, it's not like Tenna had asked her to directly involve herself in the TV station's operation. All they needed was a modern perspective on how to go about things. "A broken bar. Yeah, broken bar, okay. I can help you out." Bryce relented. Tenna turned back towards Bryce slightly. "You a broken bar, you will?" Bryce internally kicked herself. "Why yes, I will." Instantly, the cheer meter shot back up to full, and the happy music began playing again. Tenna stood straight up with a wide smile on his face. "Wonderful, folks. Can we get a round of applause for our new assistant?" The audience appeared again, roaring and throwing bouquets of flowers at Bryce's paws. Bryce just stood there and awkwardly waved at the audience before turning back to Tenna. "So broken bar, what do we do first?" Bryce asked. "First things first, what's your name?" As soon as Tenna finished talking, a podium dropped in front of Bryce, making a loud crash as it hit the ground and startling Bryce in the process. Bryce." The letters ABRY then appeared on the front of the podium. "We only have space enough for 3 letters right now, but we'll have enough space for the entire dictionary soon," Tenna triumphantly declared. "Okay, now what exactly do you need me to do, now?" Bryce asked. Tenna then held his hands behind his back and looked straight at Bryce. "Just stand still and try not to fight against it. Mike, drop it." And at Tenna's command, A hollowed-out TV set dropped onto Bryce's head like a mask. Bryce yelped and tried to throw it off, but it had seemingly glued itself to her neck already. Hey, what is this? What's going on? Bryce cried out, her fear coming back tenfold. She could feel her nose and ears beginning to twitch, as well as an odd, prickly feeling that started to pop up. See a broken bar, Tana began to explain as the prickling feeling intensified, now feeling like something was pushing against her snout and ears intensely. A broken bar, and in the Sylvian's peripheral vision, she realized what was happening. Bryce's snout was shrinking. Tana, seemingly ignoring Bryce's horror, continued. When we make the jump, we'll have a lot more time we need to fill. Bryce intensified her efforts to get the TV off. Her snout lost more and more length by the second, having shrunk down to a mere muzzle by this point. Her ears had also lost half of their original length as well. And at the moment, we don't have enough personalities to fill the necessary time slots, so we came up with the solution. Bryce's snout finished shrinking, melting away into her face and leaving only her nose and mouth behind. Tana then leaned over, pointing at Bryce while making a goofy expression of excitement. We'll turn you into a copy of me, one with all your modern knowledge. He cheered as Bryce's ribbons popped right out of her head, disintegrating into thin air before they could float to the floor. And no, you can't. I don't. Bryce's ears completely vanished, and her other facial features started to follow suit as she began to shed her fur as well. Don't worry, we'll turn you back once we've found someone to fill the extra time slots. Tana turned towards the audience, holding his hand to the side of his face as if he was telling them a massive secret. Not that anyone could ever fill my shoes, but we'll find the next best thing. Bryce tried to protest, but her words failed to exit as her mouth disappeared from her face. Soon, she suddenly found herself a broken bar relaxing. Any protesting thoughts she had in her head slowly but surely started to dull. A broken bar? No, a broken bar. What's happening? A broken bar? Yeah, a broken bar. Don't want the broken bar, Bryce thought as her now featureless head began to change shape, widening into a rectangle and quickly filling up the inside of the TV box. Once it was completely filled up, a long, pointed nose began to sprout out of the white mass, producing the noise of a slide whistle as it did so. Despite technically no longer having eyes, Bryce could still see everything around her, and she could also hear despite not having ears. This unfortunately allowed the Sylvian to witness all of the disturbing changes to her body, starting with her fur. As her silky pelage started to rapidly shed, every pore on her body relinquished its strand, and the shed hairs dissolved into nothing as they hit the ground. And my fur, a broken bar? And no, Bryce tried her hardest to dredge resistance. She didn't want this. She didn't want to be Tana, a broken bar, right? While Bryce was thinking on that, her legs began to tremble and shake as her bones rearranged, straightening out and losing their digitigrade structure, forcing Bryce's heels to plop down to the ground shortly after. Bryce's paw pads would then flatten into nothing, followed by her toes melding into one another. Under her paws were nothing but featureless, flipper-like feet. Bryce's tail would be the next to go. It started to shrink away into Bryce's spine, but instinctively she grabbed the shrinking appendage with both hands to try and stop that from happening. My tail. No, can't lose my a broken bar. Can't a broken bar look like myself with that silly thing, a broken bar? Bryce's mind was beginning to lose the battle over the body's identity. Her own thoughts were slowly being pushed out in favor of Tana's. Slowly, hesitantly, Bryce's grip on her tail loosened, allowing it to slip away into her spine, like it never existed. Wait. No, this isn't right. I'm not Tana, the broken bar. I'm Bryce. I'm a girl. I'm a broken bar. Bryce held her head tightly as she strained her mind, trying to remember her species. As she did so, her vision began to get oddly blurry and pixelated. She nervously held her hands in front of her face and shook them around to try and dispel whatever was going on. A broken bar, but to no avail. You have broken bar? My is a broken bar? My head. You have broken bar. Why can't I? Yeah, broken bar. My name is a broken bar. B Bryce. Yeah, broken bar. I'm a broken bar. Am a broken bar. A broken bar girl. The changes to Bryce's body wouldn't stop to let her catch her breath. They arguably began to ramp up in intensity now, as her breasts started to flatten while the rest of her body began swelling to masculine proportions. With the flattening of her chest, it began growing wider and longer, resulting in the straps of her dress snapping off, and the dress itself falling to the ground. And the changes to Bryce's vision began to ramp up as well. Now she was unable to see practically any detail in her body, a broken bar, and then she realized something odd. The blurriness only affected her vision when she looked at her body. Anything else was perfectly visibly broken bar. In any case, Bryce continued to get taller and taller as his proportions got more and more manly, his arms and legs thickening and his fingers and feet stretching out, making Bryce more and more unrecognizable by the second. But Bryce a broken bar, he recognized this body, for it was his. He wasn't Bryce at all. Nope, a broken bar, he was Tenna. Or, well, a broken bar Tenna too. With that realization, a brand new outfit started to form on Tenna too, starting with the white button-up shirt, followed by a red overcoat. Next a pair of black dress pants formed, complete with a belt with a large, TV-shaped buckle. Finally, a pair of large gloves and yellow shoes formed on Tenna 2's hands and feet. He now looked identical to the original Tenna, even down to appearing to be rendered in outdated CGI. With that, the transformation was done. Tenna 2's antennae briefly glowed before producing a glowing, blue orb from themselves. The original Tenna produced a Gecko container out of nowhere and then caught the orb inside of it before presenting it to the audience. This, folks, is the manifestation of Bryce's memories and identity. We'll return it to her when we don't need her help anymore. For now, I'll have Mike keep it in a safe place for her. The container then floated into the ceiling and disappeared. Original Tenna proceeded to turn towards Tenna 2. Now then, other Tenna, let's show the audience that TV never goes out of style, he proclaimed. Oh, you read my mind, Tenna 2 responded. Both Tennas then turned towards the camera, happily letting out the proclamation that a broken bar, i.e. it's TV time. Sometime later, broken bar. Bryce shot awake with the gasp she felt was a world record for how deep it was. In the next moment, Bryce realized that she wasn't staring at the wall of her own apartment as she looked at her entire body in relief, as she is still herself a broken bar. Uh-oh, Bryce, you're awake. A familiar, elderly voice spoke from beside Bryce. Bryce turned her head to the side and was met with a short, old, black goat who was looking at Bryce as if she had just seen a ghost. MM's nightmare. What happened at the broken bar? Where broken bar am I? Bryce stuttered, her eyes darting around the room nervously. While you were in the hospital, dear, M's nightmare began. I came home after my trip and found you passed out in my room. I didn't know what happened, so I brought you here. Broken bar. The doctors found out you'd fallen into a coma somehow, and we've been waiting for you to wake up ever since. What the broken bar? How the hell had Bryce fallen into a coma? She remembered it was dusty as hell in M's nightmares. How Uzzy broken bar, but there's no way that put her down for this long, right? Bryce's eyes soon fell on a TV on the other side of the room, a broken bar where a man with a TV for a head, a broken bar, was presenting a game show. Broken bar, and taking my clone spot as the host of Cooking in the Dark. Please give a warm welcome to Bryce sighed in annoyance and fell back against her pillow. A broken bar. How long have I been out for? She asked. Oh, you my broken bar, a little over a month now, M's nightmare responded. A broken bar. I remembered what happened. Oh, well then, you my broken bar, what happened? A broken bar. It's a broken bar. It's a long story. A broken bar. Can we talk about it later? Oh, yes, of course, dear. In the meantime, I'll go get the doctor and let him know you've woken up. A broken bar. M's nightmare stood up and trotted out of the room. Bryce sighed again and looked to the TV. You're welcome, she grumbled under her breath.